Hey, what is it, mortals? It is TheLuckyDerp here, and welcome to part 1 of What If Sakura Had the Nine Tails. Just wanted to greet you guys by saying sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. And so we begin. Before we begin, I'd like to inform you all about WTC's new Minecraft server. You can join us by using the Technic Pack Launcher, link in the description. The server is based in the world of Naruto. You can learn jutsu, select a clan, and train to become the most powerful shinobi, using a custom system that is unique to this server, where you can play as a ninja that is part of a clan or village. Or you can play solo as a rogue. But will you be able to stand up against the clan wars that will ensue? Well, if not, you can always train in mine and craft. War, power, challenge, and if you're lucky, a thriving village are what you can expect from this server. Not to mention all the world's secrets that are contained within the maps. To know more, check out the video description. Minato tensed up as he ran with Kushina and the newly born Naruto in his arms. Everything had gone so wrong so fast. Sweat rolled down his face as he skidded to stop to see Mebuki with her baby Sakura. The woman called out for her husband while her baby cried from all the chaos around them. The woman had talked with Kushina lately, since they ran into each other a while back, and bonded over their new roles as soon-to-be mothers. "Mebuki!" Minato called out while he raced over. "I need you to take Kushina back home for me," he practically pleaded. Mebuki gasped upon the sight of Kushina's state. She held her down, and shifted her weight, arms over her shoulders. With one arm she helped hold her up, while she used the other to hold Sakura. "Minato, what's even going—" Before she could finish her question, the man raced back off. "The Nine Tails," Kushina started to reply weakly. "It's free." Mebuki looked around in horror, all in the hopes of some dumb luck that she'd seen her husband, but no such luck came. She bit back her fear and helped Kushina home with her newborn. There she laid her down, and sat Sakura down next to the other baby. The baby finally calmed down now that they were out of the chaos. Mebuki raced to get a cold, damp cloth for Kushina. Kushina stared at her son with tired, sad eyes, then gently caressed his face as tears trailed along her. Mebuki frowned as she placed the cloth on Kushina's forehead to try to help her in any way, while she did her best to block out the chaos that went outside. She tried to bite back her internal fears at the knowledge that her husband was still out there, still with the Nine Tails of all things. She wanted to ask how and why everything happened, though she saw her friend's tears, so she decided against it. Instead, she asked a simple question. "So, what did you name them?" she asked gently. "Naruto," Kushina tiredly replied with a soft smile. Meanwhile, Minato raced to inform the third Hokage of the situation, but a masked man who started everything attacked him. Minato turned to block the attack just in time. From the corner of his eye, he spotted a startled Kizashi, who was likely out in search for Mebuki and Sakura. Minato kept the masked man at bay as he shouted to Kizashi, "Warn the third that the tailed beast is free!" The masked man moved to attack Kizashi, so he couldn't leave, but was stopped by Minato before he could. "Hurry!" Minato urged. The fight between the two held fast and strong until the rampage of the tailed beast grew too dangerous. Minato broke from the fight to stop a tailed beast bomb before it could hit the Hokage rock. He knew they needed to steal the beast away quickly. He as well needed to get his wife, son, Mebuki, and her daughter out of the crossfire. Sadly, both tasks were not as exclusive from each other as he'd like them to be. He likely only had enough time to attempt one or the other. He needed to make a choice of which to complete, and which to sacrifice in the process. Minato quickly summoned Chief Toad to restrain the tailed beast so he could leave the battle to get to the others. He then used his Flying Thunder God technique to make his way into the house where Mebuki sat and Kushina still. He slowly picked up his wife, and then asked Mebuki to get the children. Mebuki told him that she couldn't leave her husband behind, but Minato reassured her that he should be okay since he just headed to the third, who would ensure his safety. Mebuki was a bit uncertain, though followed Minato's instruction to leave with him. Minato set down his wife next to Mebuki. Shortly after their arrival, they spotted the third arrival along with Chief Toad, who began to struggle and hold back the Nine Tails. Kushina bore what strength she had to use her barrier to help bind the Nine Tails further. The third looked from the tailed beast to Minato and Kushina. "We need to reseal it now, before it gets too late," he stated firmly. I'm going to die at this rate. If we seal it in me, we can make sure it dies with me," Kushina spoke up tiredly. Both Mebuki and Minato seemed to put off at the idea of her death alone. Minato, though, rejected the idea quickly. "We need the beast to help defend the village. If another war breaks out, we'll be fighting with one arm behind our back without it," he explained with a tone that said that he'd wished not for a plan where the love of his life died in the process. "We can seal it in me instead." "No." The third was quick to reject the second plan. "You are the current Hokage, Minato. It's too dangerous to paint a target on your back." The group grew silent for a moment, but only a moment. One that stopped Minato from thinking of the prophecy that he would have normally. Mebuki spoke up in an uncertain tone. "I know I wouldn't likely be able to contain the beast myself, but—" She looked sadly at her daughter. "Maybe if we can put it in Sakura, we can raise her to be able to control it." The group looked among itself for a moment of uncertainty before the third spoke up. "A force like that would be far too powerful for a baby to contain its own, Mebuki," the third stated firmly. Not unless we put an extra line of defense in the child, Kushina stated weakly. Kushina looked between the third and Minato, who knew what she meant. The third looked to Minato as she declared that she would perform the task required to not risk the loss of Minato's life. Mebuki was a bit confused about what he meant, though her eyes grew wide as he stated the technique he would use, the death-consuming seal. Mebuki wished to come up with another idea, as did the others, but all knew there wasn't much option in the limited time they had. Kushina then offered herself as a second line of defense for the girl with Minato's regret-filled agreement. With this decision, Mebuki put Sakura in the altar they set up, and moved off to the side to hold Naruto. As they began, the Ninetales started to break free enough to move his finger. He moved to use his nail and try to kill Sakura. Mebuki moved fast. She set Naruto down, then dashed forward. She moved Sakura out of the way just enough to keep her in the area needed, but out of the path of the beast attack. The nail pierced through her stomach as Minato rushed over to keep the Ninetales from striking again. Kushina and the third paused upon the attack, but continued on once Mebuki shouted, "Hurry!" with a pained gasp. As the two finished performing the seal, Mebuki smiled down to Sakura, who began to cry from all shouting. She gently soothed her daughter as she cried as well. "I'm sorry you have to be the one to bear this, but I know you'll be more than strong enough to do it in time. Be a good girl for your father, and never give up. I love you, Sakura." Meanwhile, Kushina cried her own tears as she looked at the heartbroken Minato. The two shared a final kiss, and their own final words with each other and their son. Finally, the seal was finished. Minato stood as the weight of the battle vanished with the beast. He gently caught each of their bodies with some clones to gently set each one of them down. Minato looked on at the crying babies, with sad and tired eyes. Minato then picked up his son, then Sakura to help calm them down. He then kneeled down by the third and bowed his head to the man. "I'll make sure your sacrifice was worth it. I promise." 8 years later, a young girl ran down the path as she filled the way with her joyful giggles. Her long pink hair fluttered behind her brilliantly. She called out with a bright smile to her childhood friend. "Man, you're so slow, Naruto!" she teased the boy who struggled to keep up. "Then slow down, Sakura!" he shouted back. "No way! We'll be late for the academy if I do that!" she exclaimed. Minato smiled as the two ran off. He placed a hand on his hip with a shake of his head and sigh, and then chuckled, and left for work before he too would be late. A bit later, the two trailed into class while Sakura kept teasing Naruto. "Son of the Hokage, and you're still slower than me?" she said with a smile. "Yeah, but my dad trained you, so you're just as much as me, Sakura," the boy replied with a squint to his eyes. Sakura waved him off and went to a seat to sit down. Naruto, meanwhile, sat down with his friends Shikamaru, Kiba, and Choji. He happily joked around with them while Sakura got her notebook ready. She had never really been able to bond with anyone like Naruto did. Most of the other children's parents usually kept them away from her. Some of the kids that did talk to her usually made fun of her. Their usual insults typically involved how big they thought her forehead was. All but one girl. "Hey, Ino!" Naruto called out as the girl walked in. Sakura's head shot up, lit with a bright smile as she heard her friend's name. Ino looked a bit annoyed at how loud Naruto was, but she was kind of used to it by now. She gave a mild wave to him before she walked over to sit down with Sakura. "Hey, Ino!" Sakura said with a soft smiling tone. "Hey, Sakura," Ino replied with a warm smile. The two talked with each other as they waited for class to start. A bit into their chat, they noticed a bunch of girls who seemed to swoon over a boy who just walked in. The two looked over to see a loner-looking boy walk down the steps toward a seat far from others. The two girls blushed as they watched him from afar. The more Sakura watched the boy, the more her eyes shifted to his. There was a familiar look in them. "What's wrong?" Ino asked, when she noticed her frown. He seems lonely," she nearly whispered out. Ino looked at her friend in confusion. Sakura kept her eyes on the boy, more focused on him than her friend's confusion. She took a deep, nervous breath before she got up and started to march over to the boy. Ino let out a surprised sound before she let out a shout whisper. "What are you doing?" Ino panicked. Sakura held out a finger to tell her friend 1 minute before she continued on. The girls in the distance scowled at Sakura for daring to approach him. The boy's eyes shifted at hers as she approached. His gaze added to the nerves she already was filled with, but she forced herself to speak. Hi." She gave an awkward smile and wave. "My name is Sakura Haruno. You seem kinda lonely. Would you want to come sit with my friend and I?" Sakura offered motion to Ino, who panicked a bit when the boy looked at her. Ino, despite her panic, gave a nervous wave to the boy. His eyes shifted from Ino back to the red-faced girl before him. "Go away," he stated firmly. Sakura's face dropped as the girls all started to laugh from the back of the room. Naruto looked over to see what the girls were laughing at, only to see a clearly embarrassed Sakura, and the boy who practically scowled at her. The girls began to call out Sakura to make fun of her for even considering a boy like him would even talk to a girl like her. "Shut it!" Naruto shouted at the girls and held a fist up to him. "You're all ones to talk. You're such boring people that you think making fun of other people is such a good pastime?" "Yeah," Ino called out, then marched over to Sakura and linked arms with her friend. "She was just trying to be nice after all. You guys are all just being jerks," she declared, then stuck her tongue out to the others. She led Sakura back to their seats. The two were quickly joined by Naruto and his friends. As much as the boy was cute, Ino saw it more important to stand up with her friend than possibly risk her chances with the boy, especially after Naruto's defending of their mutual childhood friend. Ino and Naruto never fully could get along, though given the two both appreciate the other for who they were to Sakura. They tolerated each other, despite their conflicting personalities. Soon their teacher came into class to introduce himself, as Iruka-sensei. The next few years were pretty relaxed. Both Naruto and Sakura had issues with their lessons. Sakura picked up her studies fairly well, but most of anything that dealt with chakra she struggled with. This was due to the amount she held, along with its wild nature. She found it hard to gather much of any chakra for actual use, while on the other side, Naruto found it quite easy to gather his chakra, but failed to actually channel it correctly to perform most jutsus. Minato did his best to help the two figure out how to counter this issue quite a bit, though only enough to get them down to the basics. Naruto picked up ninjutsu from his father's help, but always struggled with the clone jutsu, as well as throwing weapons. Sakura, meanwhile, had found herself excelling in taijutsu as well as her standard skills and book smarts. Due to this, she largely focused on part of her training. Sometimes when she trained, Sakura noticed an odd boy with bushy eyebrows entering the training area that she was in. After his arrival, he would always begin to train as well in his own taijutsu techniques. When he was there, he kept his distance from her, while she did the same to him. One day when she was training, her long hair kept getting in her way while she was practicing, at the point the boy decided to come over to her. Sakura had assumed he came over to tease her, but instead he gave her some of his arm wraps to tie back her hair. He simply told her that tying it back would help her significantly, as well as his name, Rock Lee. From then on, she occasionally sparred with the boy. Lee also ended up assisting her commonly whenever she struggled with her moves, due to the two of them being relatively socially awkward. They never really talked past the subject of taijutsu, so the two never truly grew past sparring partners into friendship. Soon came the time where Naruto and Sakura turned 12, and their test to become genin finally arrived. When the announcement of the skill they needed to perform was the clone jutsu, Sakura sighed, while Naruto face-planted into his desk. Ino eyed them and whispered. "What's wrong?" Ino asked while she leaned over towards them. "I'm not that good at that technique," Sakura whispered back. "I'm doomed," Naruto muttered in return. Sakura gently patted Naruto's head to console him, while with her own head dropped in defeat as well. Ino sighed with a soft smile, then reached over to pat Sakura's bowed head. "You two will be fine, so quit moping like idiots," Ino said in a reassuring tone. When the time came, Sakura waited for her turn to take the test. Her attention shot over to Naruto as he came out. The boy had just finished his own test and looked totally defeated. "Oh man, I only got one clone out, even with my dad's help." He ruffled his hair in frustration. "I'm so done for." Before she could say anything to him, she was called in next. She took a deep breath and she ignored her inner self's whispers of annoyance. She tightened the white arm wraps she still used to this day to hold her hair back in a ponytail with a nod. She then marched in and looked at Iruka-sensei and Mizuki-sensei. She bowed to them while she recalled, and followed the advice of Minato. She did her best to gather her chakra as he had shown her many times before, then used the jutsu and closed her eyes. She slowly looked back to see two clones who stood behind her. "Sha!" The two behind her let out in excitement as Sakura smiled timidly. This was the best she had ever done thus far. The teachers took their notes and told her to return to the class to wait for the results. After the last student took their test, the two teachers entered the room. The students' head turned to face their teachers in silent anticipation for their test results. Naruto and Sakura sat on the edge of their seats. They hung on every word the teacher spoke, awaiting their names to be called. Sakura was called first. She raced down to collect her headband, as Naruto cheered her on loudly. Their friend group sunk in their seats a bit with embarrassment before Iruka shouted at them to be quiet. Sakura went back to her seat and smiled at Naruto in thanks. When he was called up, Sakura jumped up to cheer him on like he had before. Their friends sunk only lower to hide themselves. Naruto's face lit up as he excitedly raced down. Iruka wanted to shout at them for their commotion again, but let them have this moment. Iruka passed Naruto his headband with a nod. Once the headbands were all passed out, the kids left the building to meet with their parents excitedly. Minato congratulated Naruto with a bright smile. Naruto happily adjusted his headband, then eyed Sakura, who was with her father. The girl happily explained to him about how the test went, as well as how nervous she was. Naruto blushed, then walked over with a deep breath. "Hey Sakura, want to go get some ramen to celebrate?" Naruto asked with a shy smile. "Ramen sounds great!" Ino said as she walked over. "What?" Naruto let out a blink and the other boys all came over too. "Ramen? Count me in!" Choji declared. "Sure, I'll come," Kiba said with Akamaru agreeing via a bark. "I suppose it wouldn't be such a drag to tag along," Shikamaru said with a sigh. Naruto's eyes twitched at the others inviting themselves, though he lit up when Sakura giggled and finally answered. "Yeah, I'd love some." She noticed Lee in the distance with his own headband. "Hey Lee, want to come with us to get ramen?" She figured at this point it could be nice to invite the boy who had helped her as often as he had in celebration of how far they all came. Naruto was clearly a bit let down that so many were coming now, but was just glad Sakura didn't say no. "I would most definitely like to," Lee declared happily, then raced over. The parents chuckled and let their kids go after passing them some yen to pay for the ramen. The kids goofed off with each other as they ate here and there. They shared how scared they were in their own tests except for Ino and Shikamaru, who said it was easy. The kids took some time off to rest before their orientation would start. Sakura spent most of her time with her father. Ino was busy helping her parents at the flower shop, and Naruto was busy with the third Hokage's grandson, who, per usual, was challenging Naruto in various competitions. When her father was at work, she ended up reading more of her books to study the art of chakra control further. Though as the day neared its end of orientation, Sakura found herself a bit bored, so she decided to run out and get some food to make all of her friends some bento boxes. Naruto usually forgot to pack his own food for lunch, which usually resulted in him mooching off her, so this would give her with an entire lunch to herself rather than only half a lunch. As she made her way down the streets, the usual stares and mutters occurred. Like always, the people seemed to think she couldn't hear them, or at least didn't care enough to hold off on their comments about her when she passed. "Did you hear they actually let that kid become a ninja?" one whispered. "My niece said she didn't even make 3 like the others, only like 2 or something," the other replied. "No way, really?" a third gasped. "No doubt a pity pass," a man added as she passed the other two. Sakura balled her fist up, but kept pace as she walked. The comments continued to rain down, even as she bought the food she needed. "They should have put her down when the person has hushed before they could finish." Tears built up in the young girl's eyes. She whipped around to shout back at them, her once mint green irises now red with slits in their pupils. "Why do you all hate me so much?" The tears finally overflowed to stream down her face as she trembled where they stood.
"They all should pay for how they treated you,"
her inner self said in her mind with a monstrous tone it usually gained when she was greatly upset. Her red eyes looked amongst the terrified people around her. Even some of the girls from school in the crowd seemed scared of her at that moment. Only one set of eyes seemed calm. The same cold boy who had ignored her years ago. The boy she had come to learn is known as Sasuke. Just stood and watched her silently.
"He still looks at you with such eyes. Even as others here take you seriously, the boy still looks at you as if you're nothing,"
her inner self stated, almost displeased. Sakura gripped her bag of food tighter. She gritted her teeth that slowly grew sharper. The people around her slowly backed out of fear, but the boy stayed where he was, his eyes still locked on her.
"Show him you are something to take seriously. Show them all something they should really be scared of,"
her inner self urged. She took a step forward, but a hand gently gripped her shoulder. "Sakura?" A soft voice cut in through the silence, one that she knew well. "It's okay. Come on. I'll walk you home." Sakura's teeth regressed back. She turned to look at the source of the voice to see Mizuki-sensei. Her eyes faded back to the soft mint green they normally were. She forced the rage she had always did her best to keep down back into herself at her core once more. She nodded and walked off with him while she wiped off the tears from her cheeks with the palms of her hand. The people in the crowd began to murmur again. All but one, Sasuke. As they walked, Mizuki began to speak with a soft tone and a softer smile. "Tell me, Sakura, have you ever heard of the tale of the 9-tailed beasts?" he asked curiously. "The one who attacked the village 12 years ago?" she asked as she looked up from the dirt road. "The very one. I see you've taken your studying seriously," he stated supportively, which made the young girl smile a bit. "Then I suppose you know what happened to it, right?" "Yeah, the 4th sealed it away into someone," she explained simply. "At the cost of the 3rd, his own wife, and your mother," he added on. Sakura's eyes grew wide at the mention of her mother. The two slowly stopped walking as she reached her house. So many people were lost that night. People with loved ones left behind to mourn over their deaths, with no chance at vengeance, let alone justice. You could imagine the hatred that would brew inside the others for the person who now housed the beast. All that rage building up for years without an outlet. He sighed. I could only imagine the hatred would grow worse over time until the host died or even killed. With each word shared, Sakura's mind raced faster. She easily pieced each part together as she explained. She felt as though the world around her grew bigger. It threatened to swallow her up, while she grew smaller at its center point of hatred. That's why they hate you, Sakura. You're the one they sealed it in, he stated flatly. With those words, the force of the world felt as though it was on her shoulders. It was as though it was trying to push her into the pit the hatred had created to kill her off, all for something that wasn't her fault, and something she couldn't even fix. The children were never really told anything past how they should avoid you, all because of that moment the wrong move could trigger you to kill them. Even if it was meant to be true, that's what they believe. And your best friend Naruto? He frowned with a sad sigh. I could only imagine how he'd react when he learns that you have inside you the thing that killed his mother. That his fathers chose to hide this fact from both of you. Tears started to well up in her eyes once more as she started to hold herself tightly. How would Naruto react to that news? How would the others react? The few friends she had. Would they too come to hate her upon learning this information? I know it feels like the world is against you now, Sakura, but you shouldn't worry. He kneeled down and gently caressed her cheek. I don't hate you. In fact, I have an idea. Tonight I plan on leaving. I have much I need to do before I leave. If you meet me in the forest outside the village, you could join me. I just need you to get one thing for me first. What is it? Sakura asked. The tears at her eyes finally flowed over. The scroll of seals. It's in the fourth's house. Since you're the fourth son's friend, getting in should be simple and easy. Just get the scroll, and you can leave with me to a place where no one would know your past, where no one would hate you just for living, he explained with a rather charming smile. So, what do you say, Sakura? Thank you all for indulging yourselves in the video thus far. Hope you enjoyed it. Now there are a few more things I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, we've got a primary channel called We the Celestials. We the Celestials is what we do here already, but their content centered around the crazy world and lore of My Hero Academia. So please check us out over there if you're feeling in the mood for a roller coaster of quirky content. We also have another relative to our channel, Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes deep into the facts and lore of a wide variety of anime. It's sure to expand your weeb knowledge of all kinds of series guaranteed. I'd like to let you all know on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. If you're perhaps interested in what we do here at WTC, then I would like to extend an invitation to join the team. The only caveat being is we only accept members 16 or older to join our crew. You can find us on our Discord, which you can locate in the description below. Our Discord is an all-around fantastic place to be, whether you're a fan or looking to join our band of misfits. All you gotta do is hit up the recruitment server and sign up for whichever category of work that fulfills your interest. We're always looking for members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video, so thank you all for watching and have a great day.